in the brand new 2020 Buick Enclave ST. This ST trim level is new for 2020, and it's got a supercharged V8. No, I'm just kidding. There is the same 3.6 liter V6 making 310 horsepower as the other Enclaves since the 2018 redesign. But this ST is an option package on all of the Enclaves except the Avenir top dog trim, and brings a body color grille surround up front, a new gloss black mesh grille for that nose, and then 20-inch sort of polished and painted combination 6-spoke alloys. So it looks pretty cool. The 20s are a 2-inch bump versus what we normally have in this Enclave SL1 Essence all-wheel drive. So this is a mid-spec trim, and I'm excited to go out in it. I've never driven this new Enclave for this generation, and I've been so impressed this week. This is easily the best GM crossover I've ever driven. Maybe that's ever been. So let's talk about what it is and what's new and special, which we just did a little bit, and then we'll talk about some of its strengths and weaknesses. So this is a 7-seat premium crossover that competes with cars like the Volvo XC90, Infiniti QX60, Audi Q7, BMW X7, and a bunch of other vehicles like that. So 7 seats, it's 2 in the front, 2 in the middle in captain's chairs, and then you've got 3 in the way back there. So definitely a full 7-seater and very enormous. The thing that really sets Enclave apart versus rivals like, you know, Highlander, Pilot, Explorer, and Hyundai Palisade is that it's gigantic. It's so big. This car is so gigantic that it even has more room with the seats folded down than the Tahoe. I think we're at like 97 cubic feet or something with both seats folded down, and Tahoe's at 94. So versus Suburban is like 120 cubic feet. So basically, this is more practical than a Tahoe and a lot easier to live with and drive around town. Okay, so within that 3-row premium crossover segment, we are in the best-selling vehicles. So Enclave moves about 45 to 50,000 units a year, which is very strong performance. It's a shade of what its platform mate, the Chevy Traverse, is able to achieve with like more than 140,000 sales a year. But still, you know, pricing for this Enclave is about 10 to 15 grand more expensive than Traverse. And it really feels it. I mean, so they are like direct platform siblings, but Enclave has about 300 extra pounds of insulation material, which is a lot, obviously, and then it has different shocks, so to create a more premium ride and handling balance. And it really delivers. This is one of the smoothest and best driving, okay, and quietest SUVs I've been in a long, long time. There's almost no other vehicle that's this calm and quiet at 75 or 80 miles an hour. It's heavenly. It's absolutely amazing. So a lot of that stuff is just credit to the 2018 redesign for what GM's calling the Lambda C1XX, the long wheelbase version of that platform. So that came out in for the 2018 model year, and it basically had a bunch of upgrades, including a new all-wheel drive system that integrates a twin clutch rear end, upgraded power for the V6 from 288 horsepower to 310, and then upgrading from a 6-speed automatic transmission to a 9-speed. So all of those changes are, of course, intact and impactful going into the 2020 model year. I mean, this drivetrain is outstanding. I'm gonna pass this guy. Drivetrain is so good. Kickdown is really flawless. You know, very, very smooth at all times. More efficient than before. And just a peach. An awesome, awesome drivetrain. So it rides great on the highway. It's really quiet, and the drivetrain is great. I've been able to tell that in the city. But I wanted to come out on our twisty handling loop here to see how the handling really is, and get a sense for the all-wheel drive system and its overall balance and handling feel. So far, it seems really, really good. Enclave is standard with front-wheel drive and runs in front-wheel drive almost all the time unless you select this all-wheel drive button. So we've got it on right now, and we've got traction control off just to give us, so it doesn't cut the power at all. And it feels very, very good around the twisty road. I mean, this is a very softly sprung vehicle, so it doesn't really love these corners. And I was also surprised that for, you know, a sport, I mean, it's a sport touring edition, basically an appearance package, but there's no drive modes at all in this car. There's usually a button right here for the Enclave Premium and the Enclave Avenir loaded models, but this Essence, which has pricing from about $45,000 and upward, doesn't have that. So we'll touch on more of this later, but you know, pricing for the Enclaves starts at about $40,000 for the 2019 model year and about $41,000 for the 2020 model year. And that is for the front wheel drive. If you want all wheel drive, it's going to be $2,000 extra. And as we said, we're in a mid-spec Essence trim, so this brings leather seats and some other upgrades, but still lacks a ton of equipment. So I think I might be getting ahead of myself here, but essentially, as great as Enclave is at being luxurious and being really accomplished, and of course huge, super practical, tight turning radius, great manners in town. I mean, it's priced pretty premiumly for how much it doesn't have. So this all-wheel drive Essence ST comes in at $49,135 or something all in. And my most recent reference point for comparison is the Hyundai Palisade. Palisade is like stickers with like every single possible thing at like 47. And also runs V6 and similar 7-seat capacity with captain's chairs, or up to 8-seat in the Palisade. But it just has a lot more stuff. So like, what am I talking about? So it's got everything you really need. It's got Android Auto, it's got CarPlay, as you can see. It's got this awesome drivetrain, 5,000-pound towing capacity. I mean, that stuff is pretty much shared across all the vehicles in this segment. But you really have to go up to the premium or the Avenir level of the Enclave to start really competing with vehicles like XC90 or any of the Germans in terms of like actual equipment. Like, yes, this is the luxury version of this model versus the Traverse. So like, there's lots of soft touch materials, you know, this sort of like leatherette here, you know, lots of leatherette wraps with stitching and, you know, fake wood galore. This really handsome chestnut leather accent, but the leather, for example, leather feels really good on the seat surfaces, right? Okay, but then like classic GM, like this stuff on this part is all vinyl, and then like this stuff is actually vinyl. It's not leather, so it's just kind of like there's a lot of. But that being said, that's like the only old GM and like nasty cabin trait that's really evident. The thing that'll really stick with you, even from the base trim level with cloth seats, is how solidly assembled this vehicle feels and how quality all the touch points are. The steering wheel itself is phenomenal. I mean, this leather wrap is like a clearly semi-aniline leather. It's buttery soft. Even these plastic elements here are now like super soft touch. I mean, they just have that really premium sort of high-tech coating that feels amazing. And overall, this is definitely a luxury vehicle for how comfortable and smooth, quiet, and upscale its design is, and it's priced accordingly. So some of the other things it's missing, for example, it's like it doesn't have navigation. So there's actually no integrated nav in here, which is very unusual for almost a $50,000 car. It also doesn't have auto hold, so it's got an electronic parking brake, but it doesn't have actual auto hold functionality, which is just one of those features that once you start using it, gets really, really handy and becomes, you know, really nice to have, especially for like a luxury cruiser like this. Some of the other stuff that is just sort of like unusual omissions include like power folding third row, memory seats, cooled seats. We've got heated seats. You know, there's no heated steering wheel till you get to the big trim level upgrades. There's very limited functionality for the second row captain's chairs in terms of like how they can move around to let people into the third row. Granted, actually like flip them or tilt them or do something like that, but all the other cars in the segment do offer that. So it's just worth noting that's not available on any of the trim levels actually. But for this Essence ST, I mean, it feels really well equipped and very luxurious. It's got like most of the stuff you need, right? So it's got like blind spot, it's got the backup camera, but it doesn't have things that its rivals will, you know, that its mainstream rivals will at similar prices, or that are available on its bona fide premium, you know, luxury mark competitors. So what are those things? I mean, all the active safety tech, for example. There's no active cruise on this car, no lane keep, there is cross traffic alert, but there's no parking sensors. There's no heads-up display. There's a lot of stuff that's sort of like gone missing somehow. And I think that's a fair trade-off. I think a lot of people would want this refinement and style versus Traverse, or versus some of the other domestic car offerings, and are willing to forego some of the features in order to get it at the price they can afford. But it is just a little curious. Just a little curious. Overall, though, this is an amazing vehicle. Enclave is so capable and so comfortable. I mean, drivers absolutely love this car, and it's why it's so ubiquitous on the road. I mean, they've sold a boatload of these, and it makes perfect sense why. So this is an enormous vehicle, one of the biggest crossover-based SUVs in the world in terms of its length, like over 204 inches long. And it feels super rigid, super upscale and refined for 2020 in particular. So the ST also looks great. There's a ton of chrome on this vehicle on the exterior, so it's not really like even sort of a modest dechroming. It dechromes the door handles partially and dechromes the exterior surround of the grille, but there's still the grille crossbar and chrome, chrome ventiports, chrome accent around the windows, chrome, you know, lower sill accent, lots of chrome on the tail. It's just a very chrome heavy car, which of course is fine. It would be interesting to see what it looked like in a totally monochromatic, you know, sort of without all of that shouty chrome. But, you know, the marketplace wants what it wants. And from Buick, it apparently wants copious amounts of chrome, which is cool. It's a great looking design. It looks really cool. It's very evolutionary versus the previous generation, but also a lot more upscale and well, you know, better executed for the 2020s and beyond for this generation. Looks cool, drives great. Pricing is a little steep for what you get, but there's a but. The but caveat that we should note. Oh yeah, so one other thing before we talk about the pricing caveat. Switchgear. Okay, so the overall switchgear and feel is so outstanding versus any General Motors vehicle I've ever driven before. Like, it's, you know, even like the windshield, you know, the wiper stalks and stuff like that is just 1,000 times better than it's ever been in a Buick that I've ever driven. So huge applause there. Something that owners will really appreciate down the line. You know, after 5 years, after 10 years, you want that stuff to be, you know, assembled really well so that all the parts don't start falling off, which is good. One of the old school elements is the way the turn signal sounds. I'm gonna be quiet so we can hear it. It sounds really old-fashioned, but that's about it. Like, it used to be like the actual action for the turn signal was like there was like a ton of play. You felt like you could break the knob off in your hand. I mean, it was just a pretty lousy experience. Even the old seat belts were gigantic in some of the Buicks I tested before. So they've just done a really good comprehensive job at updating and future-proofing this vehicle in a really good way. So what is that pricing caveat for the Enclave? Okay, so it feels like it might be priced about maybe $5,000 too ambitiously, in that this thing comes in like at $49,100 and doesn't have nav. I mean, it doesn't have a lot of stuff. So it sort of feels like that sometimes. Well, we're in luck because there's sort of like a, you know, an evergreen promotion on these vehicles that's about 12% off. So that tallies up to about $7,000 to $10,000, depending on how loaded it really is, or maybe more like $5,000 to $8,000. but still enough to bring this vehicle back into the competitive set of loaded mainstream models. And it, you know, let's be honest, it really does straddle the line between cars like Pilot and really truly upscale premium vehicles like the Audi Q7. You know, that can sticker anywhere from 70 to 125 grand. So it does straddle the line there, and with aggressive pricing incentives, it basically brings this Enclave back into a more attainable place. Might let you go up to the premium trim level, for example, to get those vented seats and some of the other goodies, and really just be a little more, give you a little more value for your dollars. But I mean, overall, the best GM crossover I've ever driven. It's a great vehicle to have in any lineup, but particularly the General Motors lineup, where it's totally unique in its offering. I mean, it does share that platform with Traverse, but it really has a unique market position that replaces both the previous Enclave and the previous Acadia, as the Acadia got a lot smaller for this latest generation. And it's doing well. Sales are up like 20% year over year. I mean, it's doing really, really well. The thing that I was thinking about with another little interesting tidbit is that, you know, a lot of automakers, when they're introducing their biggest three-row crossovers, like Hyundai with the Palisade, for example, one of the things they often stress is like they want to keep people in the brand. You know, they don't want people to size out of the brand once they have, you know, a big brood of children. So Enclave definitely does that and keeps people in the Buick, Cadillac, GMC, Chevy fold, but it also helps for people coming back down. One of my friends from high school has this car. Said her kids love it because it's got, like, you know, 15 USB points and cup holders everywhere. So they really like it. And she actually said she was coming down from a Yukon XL, and this is just like a dream. It drives like, like a super practical city car versus if you've been driving a Suburban or a Tahoe or Yukon. This Enclave and Traverse probably are just nimble, nippy, and they really don't give up much in terms of their interior roominess and capability. The biggest thing you lose is the ability to tow more than 5,000 pounds. Which if you have a boat that's anywhere near that, you obviously want to be you want to have more capacity than you're actually going to be using. I mean, down here in the low country in South Carolina, it's all flat, so it's not a big deal. But if you're towing anywhere that has hills, you want some extra you don't want to be bumping right against the max tow capacity, or your foot will be on the floor and you're doing 40 up a hill, which is no fun. So for people who do have like enormous boats and are doing a lot of big heavy towing, sure, I mean, there's a reason for Tahoe and Suburban to still be their number one vehicle choices. But for everybody else, there's no downside to going to this Enclave size vehicle. It's absolutely enormous, but brings, you know, like a 5-foot tighter turning radius, so you can actually do U-turns. You can park. It does, you know, it does well on fuel, and it's a peach. It's a lot friendlier, a lot comfier ride, and less truck-like noise, vibration, and harshness. So overall, Enclave is great. Wish it had a little more equipment for the price, but the incentives sort of balance all that out. So hope you guys enjoyed the review. Check out the written portion and all the photos over on carrevsdaily.com. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you're new. That stuff really helps us and helps YouTube to recommend this video as something that's interesting and informative. Thanks a lot. See you next time.